Welcome to Pagan Crafting. I'm your host, Kara. Today we're going to make a pocket watch modification. In this little rib cage pocket watch, we're going to make a realistic heart and some mushrooms with some moss. Join me today if you want to learn how to make this cute little modification. So I've always wanted to do a pocket watch modification, but who wants to destroy a really good pocket watch? So I found this super cheap pocket watch on Temu and I'm so excited. Wait a sec. Let's do some magic. What else does this watch have in store for us? 1, 2, 3. Ta-da! It is also a rib cage, but wait, there's more. Yes, it has a nice little watch to it, but this rib cage needs a heart. It needs some love. It definitely needs some love. So let us work on this together, shall we? So first what we have to do is take it apart. There is a little notch in here that I should be able to wedge this open and pop it up. I'm just really worried about shish kebabbing myself. There we go. Not as mechanical as I thought it was going to be in the back. Not gonna lie. I was hoping there'd be some like gears and stuff that I could take apart and use in this heart. But no. This is new school. I should have known. But still, you know, it's like opening up the back of an old painting. You hope for like a pirate letter, right? So we're going to take all this apart. I might save this for another little project because it still works on its own. Now we're going to start to build up the heart here. The heart you want kind of like an egg shape, a little fatter at the top and smaller at the bottom. Now we're going to start building up the different ventricles and aortas and veins. We're going to hit those. Can't forget the opposite side too. Those little guys, it's going to look so adorable. We're going to make this as realistic as absolutely possible. Using the back side of my blade helps me make a little slice in there to help support it while I can rock that. Put it on all these little veins just ever so gingerly. Then I'm going to use the end of another tool to make the holes in the ends. My little dot maker, there it is. Then as you push down to make the little circles in the end, it also helps adhere it onto the heart too, which is lovely. Then you can make the little vein holes as big as you'd like. Next up, what we want to do is add some super thin veins. I think I'm going to pop out this little piece of glass here Wound up being plastic. I didn't even keep it. If it was glass, I would have kept that. That would have been cool. But I did get this whole little watch for like $4. I think I'd like to get a couple more pocket watches. There was a couple more there that I saw that I want to modify. One was an octopus. Heck yeah, it needs a little boat with a little origami paper boat. And I saw one that was like a little tree. I think that one needs another heart behind it, little tree of life and the heart. So rock it in the veins as thin as you possibly can. No rhyme or reason. There's some veins that come off the heart and they're just nice and thin and you can pull them and adhere them on. You don't even have to press these ones on. These are going to be fun to paint later. You might have to do a little dry brushing to try to hit that on if you're not as savvy with the thin paintbrush. Now on to our mushrooms. First I was playing with the stems and then realized that I need to make the stems a little bit thicker. So doing the mushroom tops right now. I soon discover that if they don't want it, they're so tiny, the mushroom tops, that I couldn't get in the little stems. So I'm going to put down the stems first, then build up the little mushroom cap on top of that. That should be able to, so I'll be able to just stick it down. Which I like this stem better because it's thicker at the bottom and thinner on top. Looks a little bit more realistic vibe. I'll use my little mushroom cap top. I still will create a little bit of a hole for that to sit in, and squishing around the edges will thin that out, and then we'll be able to add some texture to that. Oh, so cute. I had to cut half of it off so I can squish it in. Here we go. Looks a bit more like a polypore, but that's okay. And adding some more mushroom stems. I'm still keeping it a little bit thicker on one end. Let's see where we'll put the next one here. I think that'll look cool. I'm glad I took off the little piece of plastic, the glass front. I'll be able to squeeze out the mushrooms a little bit more. I originally wanted the mushrooms kind of crawling out through the rib cage, but then I'll never be able to close the watch. It'll just stay open, which is still a possibility. Maybe I'll do that with the tree modification. Maybe I'll draw some mushrooms growing out of the rib cage. My daughter wants the tree one. She wants a realistic heart and then roots growing out of the heart. So we will figure out how to rock that and make that work. I'm excited. Such a cool idea. And this is after it's all baked. So depending on what your clay calls for, mine's about 132 degrees Fahrenheit for about 30 minutes-ish. And there we have it. Look at that little detail. This is all baked on. Now, I was surprised I never had to glue it on. So it adhered to the metal quite nice. I didn't have to even squish it down. It just stayed on quite nice. If you don't have the special glue to use, you could use Mod Podge glue. There is a special clay bake glue to buy. But I've really discovered recently the Mod Podge, you can bake it as well. It works out quite nice. It goes clear. It doesn't react. It doesn't bubble, and it doesn't react with if you have any paint down or anything too. So I'm starting to paint some of my clay and then bake it. It's new to me. So this layer I'm doing with the turquoise. I wound up doing 2 layers, just a little FYI. Because you could see my paintbrush streakies on there. So I wound up using a few paintbrushes to get in there and kind of alleviate those streaks and do a couple coats. So our next coat is I'm making a little bit of a lighter turquoise. And I'm going to do just a little bit of a brush stamping around the outskirts of the sculpture now, and that will just highlight it a little bit more, give it a little presentation, maybe a little depth. I'm going to add some resin to this later to snap it out, but I'm not going to paint the background. I'm going to leave the back flat color, no gloss. Starting off with red, we're going to rock in a few layers. I'm going to use this gorgeous bright red. And I find if you use a bit of burgundy or purples with it too, you can dry brush over it, or while it's still wet, you can mix the colors right on it. Either or, it's gonna turn out great. But if you mix your colors while it's wet, know that you can mud them up soon. So maybe a dry brush, if you're not as savvy, would create some beautiful effects for you. So now you see me here bringing in the burgundy. I'm bringing this over the different muscles, the highlight points I want to bring out. So I'll bring out the low lights instead of bringing out a dark color, just some burgundies. And I dip it in with purple at the same time. Mix that together with the reds to create some beautiful muscle techniques, some muscle tones. And this is a way to kind of also, if you bring in the burgundies and purples around the veins, it's going to pop out the veins a little bit more too. We're going to paint those veins blue later, but by adding a bit of burgundy around the sides of the vein, it's going to be able to create a bit of a shadow look, if you will. Bringing in some blue now on our different veins throughout. This guide pokes through the other side, so we got to match that up. Again, adding our, instead of shadows with black, we're going to add in the burgundies. Now rocking in our little mushrooms. I would have loved to do my traditional red mushrooms with white dots. I know I do them all the time, but they're just so adorable. But if I would have done the red, of course, the red on the red, you wouldn't have seen them. So we're going to bring in some nice royal purple here. And then I'm thinking some lavender dots on them, and we'll create some nice little technique, some little fringe around the skirts of the little cap of the mushroom head. Our next up is the stems of the mushroom. I have a nice light cream color here. I'm going to start that with underneath the caps. I will also add a dot of white to that here and there under the caps, but mainly a cream we'll be bringing in. A cream for the whole stem, and do a nice thick coat, and it helps kind of alleviate any mistakes that you made when you may have been painting the blue background like I did. I'm using a very, very fine brush. If you notice the length of the brush, it helps me get into a finer spot than a shorter bristles. and it's a little more flexible too. This brush reminds me of kind of a miniature pinstriping brush. It's really cool. Not the same cut the brush has, but the same control for sure. Now this video is sped up, so you don't have to painfully go through how slowly some of this takes, but take your time. This is no rush. I'm adding some white here now onto the cream color, and it just pops it out. It gives it a more realistic effect, and you can see the striations in the stem. Now these are made up mushrooms so that you can be any color that you'd like. The only color I wouldn't suggest if you do make this one is don't go with red, because you're not going to see it really on the red heart, of course. But any color, like even a green mushrooms or a blue, a royal blue would have been really, really nice on this one too. Yellow or orange would be a really nice contrast. And then bringing back our little streaky striations with the white again on top of these stems. Now I'm going to bring some highlights, going back over some of my burgundies with just a bright red, and bringing in some lights of striations into the muscle. Now this is where it's going to get, ooh, how do you know that I was an ex-tattoo artist when I could do lines this fine? Yes, retired master tattoo artist. I can rock in some teeny tiny little lines. Now, if you don't want to do this yourself, I would suggest a dry brush so you don't have to paint on those lines on the little veins. But you definitely want the finest brush you could possibly find. I love this brush. It's one of my favorites. Like I said, so flexible, and it's really able to control it once you get used to the flexibility. Ooh, we're going to go back to the mushrooms now. We're going to bring in some light lines along the edges. We want to bring in some little streaky lines to bring in the little ruffles around the edges of the mushroom veil. It's so tiny, I couldn't even zoom into it for you, but I will be able to show you a final picture here, or a final video here in just a moment. When I'm doing the dot work and that, you'll be able to see a little bit more of the detail going in. There we go. Now you can see all those nice little fine lines. Now I'm using my little dot tool here, and I'm using little lavender, light lavender, violet, purple dots. Now I'd like to make is a wash. We're going to add a fair bit of water to this wash. I'm going to do a little bit of brushing on top of the heart as well. You want it quite thinned out because it's going to dry out. You could always add more washes if it need be. I'm just going to pop these around the veins, little ventricles. It looks dark right now, but it will dry out light. Now we're going to bring in our shadows here. I'm going for it. I'm doing a streaky wash of lines on the mushrooms. I was surprised how well the lines stayed on. I thought it would be just a wash and it would just dry kind of light, but you could definitely see the little streak lines that I did, so I was quite stoked. There we go, quick little few second wash and that's done. Oh, I'm getting so happy. The main meat of it is done. Now we're going to use some UV resin with a little black light. Now this black light, I'm pretty stoked to be able to use it with the resin because this is actually I use it for ghost hunting. So this is going to be cool to use it for this. I've never used this UV hardener up until today. This is my first time. I will say this stuff is highly toxic and stinky. I was wearing a mask. I was wearing a construction mask, just a white one, but it wasn't strong enough. It was still quite toxic, quite strong. So I'm gonna have to get myself a little respirator mask for painting, one of those kind, but holy smokes, it is toxic and strong. I was holding my breath as much as I could. So FYI, if you haven't used this stuff before, whew, new to me. So I'm doing a coat here of the UV resin. I really wanted the heart to look as realistic as possible and kind of, you know, juicy. And I painted a very nice thin coating on the mushrooms. They were perfect, but the coating I did, you could already see how I'm losing detail with the resin on the heart. Now, when it hardened, I lost all my detail. You can't see all the little ventricles and the veins and all the little bumps and everything I did at the top. So I really hope you enjoy the outcome picture at the end, because I'm actually super bummed that I'm gonna have to put like a thinnest of coats on next time I do something like that, or make something this small and coat it with resin. So very fine, thin coating is my word of advice. You can learn from my mistake. Yikes. And I keep the back flat. So I want to hit all my lights off now. I have about 3 lights I have to turn off. Give me one moment here. I'm going to step away. There's 1, 2, and 1 more to turn off. One moment. Now I'm going to grab my little black light. Yeah, this is so cool. So it says on the UV resin for that brand 2 to 4 minutes, or something like 3 to 4 hours outside in the sunlight, the UV sunlight. But this is great for me. This was done in a couple minutes, and it's hard. It was a nice thin layer, so it was very, very quick. And you can see how the top, I lost my detail. So sad, but it's really cool. I think I'm just gonna make another one and have some fun with that, and just lesson learned. So now we got to pop this back in, but this little spring guy is in the way. Now I'm testing here, the contraption still works, but so I should be able to clip that away, no worries. You can see the white stuff up top. I put some clay in there to kind of hold it in place. I was going to bake that on, but it wasn't really seem to do anything for me, so I wound up scooping that out a little later. And my gosh, I didn't check it along the way before I baked it on and painted and did everything, but it just fits. It just fits. Oh my gosh. I will tell you that the heart was my second attempt. The first realistic heart that I made looked more like a Bigfoot, like a Sasquatch foot. It was kind of, or a chicken heart, squished. So I wanted making the second one for you. So the contraption still works and nothing pokes into the heart now. So that works out fantastic. I was just fiddling with it a little bit more, but I would still like to add some moss to this. The mushrooms are kind of growing out of nowhere right now. So we're going to add some moss to kind of create a little bed in there. But that closed up super nice there. And we're going to glue the back on. We're going to use some Gorilla Glue gel. This stuff's amazing. So I'm going to hit all the little brackets that are in the back with the glue. It does snap into place normally, but it just fits with the mushrooms and it was kind of not wanting to click in. So we're going to glue it in with super glue. I'm determined. But while we'll let the glue set a little bit while we get our moss rocking in here. Just using some Mod Podge glue. You could also use some of that Gorilla Glue too, but I didn't want it sticking all over everything. I'd put the glue right on the moss, and then we can just use our little tool to help squish that right down. And you want to make sure you don't have any moss sticking out the bottom, of course, because you're not going to be able to close that very well, which I soon found out that even though I knew the moss was sticking out, I still decided to struggle with it instead of just poking it back in. But no, that's the way I roll. I'm committed. I'm loving this. I love the little bit of moss. Everything needs moss and mushrooms, right? Comment down below and a little mushroom emoji if you think everything needs moss and mushrooms in crafts. Now, I did wind up adding a little bit more moss after I got the pocket watch all back together with the sculpture. It wound up just squishing in a little bit more, which I didn't film. There we go. Look at all that little detail. The moss is perfect. I love it. Now we got to get this all back together here. So make sure we're getting that moss tucked in so we can close this up. Remembering you got super glue down there, Kara. All right. See how this just fits, dudes. Oh my gosh, this just fits. I really had to hold it down and also glue my finger down onto it with super glue. That's so I wound up pulling the back off. And it slid, so it doesn't fit very well with the mushrooms. Oh, I want to glue my finger again. And I wound up just having to hold this for a couple minutes. You can see the moss sticking out the bottom. But whatever. I'm determined. It's going to stick. There we have it. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today. Throw me down in the comments if you like to see something like this again. I would like to do one with an octopus and a little pirate ship.
or one with the tree of life. Throw me down in the comments if this is something you'd like to see again. But hey, thanks for chilling out with me, and have yourself an absolutely magical day.